Let's switch gears and let's talk basketball. You are going to be calling the Combine tonight with Jimmy Dykes. Am I right? Is it Jimmy that's doing it with you?
It's Jimmy. We call it a pro day. But, yeah, it's a Combine. Yeah, I don't know what the graphic is going to look like, but Jimmy's in town.
I'm sorry. Shannon, I didn't get to use Tom's official pro day phrase. Let me just say, the Tom Hart pro day is tonight.
Wait a second. You guys didn't even know this thing existed until I tweeted about it like 24
That's true.
hours
I
ago.
didn't. That's a very good point. So now that you got to see tape of practice in order to get yourself ready for this. So none of us have seen it. A lot of people have never seen any of these guys play. So let's go through, and I want you to give me some thoughts on some players, if you're all right. But first, overall, give me your overall thought on what you see from this Kentucky team in those tapes.
So I saw him on tape, and then I shouldn't say this out loud, so don't tell anybody, but we got in the building yesterday, and we watched practice live. Now, we're going to talk about that during the broadcast tonight, so I don't know why I have to keep it secret, but I don't want anyone's feelings to get hurt. What jumped out at me were three guys. And listen, there's elite talent on this roster top to bottom. But obviously, B.J. Boston, who's going by Brandon now, he's always around the ball.
Well, now, wait a minute. He told Peter Burns he's Brandon off the court, B.J. on it.
Okay, well, then I don't know. I'm confused. Like, is it a Combine? Is it a pro day? Is he Brandon? Is he B.J.? I'm just going to
whatever it is.
Time and do my best.
Is he our best player? Is he our best player?
He's the best player, but Olivier Sarr is amazing to me. He's a 7-footer. He's about 240 pounds, but he runs the floor like he's a wing. And He plays above the rim like Nick Richards, but he's more refined than Richards is. And he plays hard on both ends of the floor. So I just think, I don't know what kind of pro career he's going to have, and I'm not saying he's going to average 20 and 10, but I think SEC teams are going to have a really hard time handling his size. And then especially playing right next to him, Isaiah Jackson, who is just – he reminds me of Dennis Rodman in that he never stops going. And you don't have to run a play for him. He's going to get an offensive rebound. He's going to get a putback dunk. He's going to grab every defensive rebound when he's on the floor. I think he's really good defensively. And you put him next to, like on his own, if he were playing the 5, he may be a little small because he's, 210 pounds maybe. But next to him, next to Sarr, those two dudes are going to dominate some teams on the inside. So that's what's jumped out at me watching the early practices on tape and then the scrimmages and then getting in there yesterday.
So Jackson and Sarr, I like what you said. I sort of spoke over you on B.J. Boston. I mean, he's a tremendous talent. Is there somebody that you can that he reminds you of? Like, what will people see when they see this guy who probably will be a top 5 pick in the draft? What are they going to see when they see him for the first time?
Well, I guess the one thing I'm waiting to see from him, and it wasn't evident in what I've seen, not to say it's not there, but I want to see what his perimeter jump shot game is like. He reminds me of a guy that doesn't need to knock down a bunch of threes. Now, he's going to have to knock them down when he's open, obviously, or they're just going to stop guarding him. And he's a better shooter, I believe, than what I've seen thus far. He's great with the ball in his hand. He can get to the rim. He can play above the rim. I don't know if there's a comp out there because his length is hidden, I think, on the floor because everybody on the floor is 6'7". Everybody. I mean, aside from the point guards, this lineup is huge across the line. So it's hard to see, I think, just how good he is playing against his own teammates. It'll be a lot more evident once he gets on the floor in a game. And they're not going to have a 6'7" dude that can guard him.
No, they're not.
They're going to have maybe a 6'4" guy, but he can just shoot right over the top of him. And if they try to put a bigger guy on him, he'll go right by him. So I think he's a mismatch problem for a lot of teams.
You didn't mention Terence Clark, who, at least when he committed, was the highest-ranked recruit in the class. I've heard he's playing really well, but maybe not quite at the level of the B.J. Boston, maybe a notch below. Is that kind of what you've seen?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we talked to Cal yesterday. His teams notoriously for their accolades are slow starters. He's really proud of where they are right now, and they're coming together as a team. But with a shortened non-conference schedule, I think it puts a little bit more pressure on guys to be playing their best as early as possible. So I wouldn't expect an incredible start from Terence Clark. Now, he could look different in games than he has in practices, and I honestly think a lot of times games are going to be easier for these guys than practices, especially who they're going up against. But I think it might be kind of a long runway to get him going, and then once we get into conference play, he should turn out to be who he's expected to be, if that makes sense.
Everybody talks about these point guard battles in practice between the senior Davion Mintz from Creighton and then freshman Devin Askew. I've kind of heard that it got compared to me as Andrew Harris and Tyler Ulis back in the day, how it was just a war between two guys, sort of one guy defending his turf and the other young guy. What have you seen on it?
It's interesting that you bring up Ulis because I'm sitting there watching Cal coach his point guards, and what I thought about was playing point guard for Cal is like playing quarterback for Bill Belichick, in that if you are great and you earn his trust, he will let you run this team. And that's what I think of when I think of Tyler Ulis. If you're not excellent and you don't have attention to detail, he is going to be on you every second. So there's a lot of coaching going on, especially with Askew. He's young. He's new to this. It's the nuance of how to set up the screen properly, how to get your footwork right. It's on Davion Mintz, giving the guy the ball in traffic, make sure you're giving it to the right guy, and just these attention to details that happens in a John Calipari practice this time of year is accelerated when you're handing the ball to two point guards who haven't done it at this level. Now, Creighton is a great program, and Davion Mintz did it for a long time at Creighton, but I don't think they ran at this speed. You know, that was more of we'll get the ball up the court, we'll get into some sets, we'll run some offense, especially, his first few years there. So this is a different speed. I think they're both really good. I think they're going to be asked to do simple things, which is run this offense, distribute the ball, get it to the scorers at the right time, and not much else is going to be expected of them. You're not going to ask Devin Askew to hit 5 threes a game. That doesn't mean he can't, but it's not going to be expected of them. They just need to run this offense efficiently, and it's a good battle. I mean, they're sharing time. They're going against each other head-to-head every time down the floor, and that's going to make them both better.
Ryan Lemon, even though we know Tom Hart, I always give you one question, so I'll even give you one question with our friend Tom Hart.
Well, thanks you, Matt. Hey, Tom, Ryan Lemon, long-time listener, first-time caller. Love your work.
Thanks you. Thanks you, Shannon. Thanks you. Yes, thanks you. Go ahead.
Love your work, especially your Korean baseball stuff. You do such a great job. I've been following you for years. Your tweet the other day, I was a little shocked when you mentioned, these, superstars, but then you threw in that you thought Dante Allen was like stroking it. Like, you really think he's got a chance to get on the floor because he may be one of our best shooters?
I think he is the best shooter right now, but he's going to have to be – I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. He's going to have to be more than that to be on the floor, right? He's got to be able to play defense and take care of the ball and all that stuff. But when he's on the floor and gets those opportunities, he's got to knock down shots. I mean, that's what's going to put him on the floor and get him playing time. And Jimmy Dykes and I were watching practice yesterday and watching him shoot, and I said to Jimmy – I said, I could see this guy hit 6 threes in one game and then not make a three for 3 straight games. I think he's going to be streaky, and his playing time might be streaky, depending on what he's doing to keep Cal happy, all the other stuff, running the right play, being in the right spot on the floor, playing defense, rebounding. But, yeah, I think he's got a chance to play. I think he'd be just outside the main rotation right now, but to me, just watching the early scrimmages, it's obvious when he's on the floor. It's like watching J.J. Redick. Like, he's on the floor to shoot, so he's going to stand out as a shooter. And so right now I think he's the best shooter out there.
One person writes, who does Tom think will be the starters in the first game? What do you think, Tom?
I think point guard would be a toss-up, but I would expect, this is not from what I've seen, just kind of using my common sense, that Davion Mintz is probably the starter early, and I would guess that they actually play the same amount of minutes, or Askew could play more minutes, but I think he wants a veteran out there to start things off. Obviously, Boston and Clark. Keon Brooks, he wasn't a full participant in practice yesterday. He's still working through the calf injury. Now he's got couple weeks before he could get in there as a starter. But right now, I'd put Isaiah Jackson there at the 4 and Olivier Sarr. Now, that'll depend on who your matchups are and who you're playing against and, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you have Mintz, Boston, Clark, Jackson, and Sarr, that's a team that's going to give a lot of SEC opponents fits right there, that 5. And Isaiah Jackson, I'd also throw this out there. You would have no problem bringing him off the bench because he could come in at a couple different positions, and he's going to bring instant energy. So if you wanted to play your lineup like that, you'd say, well, we've got Jackson sitting here, and he's going to be in there within the first 4 minutes. It's just a matter of who he's going in for. And if we get off to a slow start, he'll come in there and get everybody revved up.
Shannon, his quick answer is like when I tell people they have 20 seconds before to make the point.
Yeah.
And quick is not.
I'm better when I'm not there, though.
I understand. So. Joe says, Joe asked me, is this a legitimate Final Four team?
I don't know because I don't know what anybody else looks like. I went to Arkansas's practice last week.
But I mean, you've been to Kentucky. You've been to Kentucky games of teams that were Final Four caliber. How does this compare? Like, in terms of upside, I've compared it to the 2017 team, that Fox, Monk, Bam team in terms of upside. Do you think it's there?
I think right now it's more of an Elite Eight team than a Final Four team. That doesn't mean they can't get there. And the other thing is, we don't know what this season is going to look like. We don't know what happens when teams have to sit for 2 weeks or who misses time.
I mean, listen to this. He's sitting here telling me it's an Elite Eight team.
We've seen enough of those Elite Eight teams.
I mean, we've had a ton of Elite Eight teams. Like you're bumming me out, Tom. I mean, so look, let's go through this. I believe the 3 best teams Kentucky's had with Cal were 2010, 2012, 2015. I don't think this team is quite with those. But the next pack of teams, which is 2014, 2011, 2017, Brandon Knight, the team with all freshmen that went championship game, Fox, Monk, Bam, I think they're in that group. Do you disagree with me there? You think they're below that group?
I'm really bad at comps because I didn't watch those guys every day. I am thinking more along the lines of who else is out there within college basketball. And I'll be honest, to me, like you guys were surprised this event is happening, it doesn't feel like college basketball is upon us yet. So I haven't done a deep dive on everybody. To me, if you're a Final Four team, you're a national championship caliber team. And that doesn't mean this team couldn't win it, but I wouldn't say anything less than a national championship is a disappointment with this team. So that's how I view Final Four teams. I didn't mean to offend anybody. Let's
just. I mean, you're not offending. It's just you made us real sad, and you're saying you kind of become a bummer, and so
he's just feeling good because Missouri beat us in football. He's all full of himself right now.
Yeah, but don't you want an honest answer?
No, I did want an honest answer. You're right, Shannon. Yeah. 3-point shooting. From what I've heard, they believe they have 2 really good 3-point shooters in B.J. Boston and the kid, Dante Allen, but they're worried maybe. Cal's never worried about 3-point shooting, even if he should be. Do you think there's enough 3-point shooting on the team?
If you're in a 3-point contest, no, there's not enough 3-point shooting on this team. Can this team score points without 3-point shooting? Absolutely. So I'm hedging my answer a little bit there. I think Boston and Allen are good enough, but I don't think this is a team that's going to rely on jump shots to win games. I mean, they've got pure athleticism and size inside, so I think it's less important for Kentucky than other teams to have pure 3-point shooters on the floor.
Cal has told some people I know privately that he thinks this could develop, if everything went well, into his second-best defensive team behind 2015, which was, historically good defensively. Do you see this team as potentially becoming elite defensively?
Yes, and because I think they're versatile defensively. So you could take B.J. Boston or Terence Clark, and you could put them on the opposing team's point guard and absolutely shut them down. I mean, that's 6'7" length from both of those guys. You've got Sarr inside, who I mentioned plays above the rim. He's a true 7-footer. You've got Jackson, who plays nonstop. We haven't talked about Lance Ware, who's just a bull in the china shop. Cameron Fletcher makes big plays. He's a big, wide-body dude. I could totally see this being an elite defensive team.